Welcome to Love's Tender Flame, Tales of Romance. I'm Mardell, reading The Auction Block by Rex Beach. Chapter 21. It still lacked something of luncheon time when Bob Wharton swung into Fifth Avenue with Ying snugly ensconced in his coat pocket. Bob was in fine fettle, what with the anticipation of Lorelei's delight at his gift and the certainty of an agreeable hour with his tailor. It was always a pleasure to deal with Kurtz, for in his shop customers were treated with the most delicate consideration. Salesmen, cutters, fitters, all were pleasant acquaintances who displayed neither the fawning obsequiousness of Fifth Avenue tradespeople nor the sullen apathy of Broadway clerks. Kurtz himself was an artist. He was also a person of generally cultivated taste and a man about town. His pleasure in making a sale was less than his delight at meeting and serving his customers, and his books were open only to those he considered his equals. A stony-faced doorman kept watch and ward in the Gothic hallway to discourage the general public from entering the premises. The fact that Bob owed several $100 dismayed that young man not in the least, for Kurtz never mentioned money matters, the price of garments being after all of far less consequence than fit and style, and that elusive something which Kurtz called effect. Our daily actions are controlled by a variety of opposing influences, which are like threads pulling at us from various directions. When for any reason certain of these threads are snapped and the balance is disturbed, we are drawn into strange pathways, and our whole lives may be changed through the operation of what seems a most trivial case. In Bob's case, the cause approached all unheralded in the person of Mr. Richard Cady, a youth whose magnificent vacuity of purpose was the envy of his friends. Comet-like, he was destined to appear, flash brightly, then disappear below the horizon of this tale. Mr. Cady greeted Bob with listless enthusiasm, teetering the while upon his cane like a Japanese equilibrist. "Haven't seen you for ages," he began. "Been abroad?" Bob explained that he was spending the summer in New York, a statement that filled his listener with the same horror he would have felt had he learned that Bob was passing the heated season in the miasmatic jungles of the Amazon. "Just ran down from Newport," Cady volunteered. "I'm sailing today. Better join me for a trip." "I know," he cut Bob's refusal short. "Travel's an awful nuisance. I get seasick myself." "Then why play at it?" Cady rolled a mournful eye upon his friend. "Girl," said he hollowly. "Show girl. If I stay, I'll marry her. And that wouldn't do. Positively not. So I'm running away. I'll wait over if you'll join me." "I'm a working man." "Aw." Mr. Caddy expelled a short laugh. "True. And I've quit drinking." Now, Cady was blasé, but he had a heart. His sympathies were slow, but he was not insensible to misfortune. Accordingly, he responded with a cry of pity, running his eye over his friend to estimate the ravages of temperance. Midway in its course, his gaze halted. He passed a silk-gloved palm lightly across his brow and looked again. A tiny head seemed to protrude from Bob's pocket. A pair of bright, inquiring eyes seemed to be peering directly at the observer. I guess I'd better quit too, said Katy faintly. Are you alone? Bob gently extracted Ying from his resting place, and the two men studied him gravely. Little beggar, isn't he? Katy remarked. Has he got a brother? Oh, I'd like to give one to, you know. He's alone in the world. I'm his nearest of kin. Give you $5 for him, Katy offered. I just paid 500, and he's worth 1,000. Why, his people came over ahead of the Mayflower. The gloomy lover was interested. In his face there gleamed a faint desire. Think of it. Well, make it 1,000. I'll send him a bunch of orchids. Ha! He doubled over his stick, convulsed with appreciation of his own originality, but again Bob refused. Don't be nasty. I'll make it 1,500. Bob carefully replaced the canine atom and grinned at his friend. I need the money, but nothing doing. Up against it? Hopefully inquired the other. Broke. I couldn't afford a nickel to see an earthquake. I'll lend you 1,500 and take Ying as security. But Bob remained inflexible, and Mr. Katy relapsed into gloom, muttering, Gee, you're a rotten businessman. So says my heartless father. He has sewed up my pockets and scuttled my drawing account, hence the dinner pail on my arm. I'm in quest of toil. I'll bet you starve, brightly predicted Mr. Katy in an effort at encouragement. I'll lay you 5,000 that you make a flivver of anything you try. I've quit gambling, too. As they shook hands, Katy grunted. My invitation to globetrot is withdrawn. Fine company you'd be. As Bob walked up the avenue, he pondered deeply, wondering if he really were so lacking in ability as his friends believed. Money was such a common thing, after all. The silly labor of acquiring it could not be half so interesting as the spending of it. Anybody could make money, but to enjoy it, to circulate it judiciously, one must possess individuality of a sort. Money seemed to come to some people without effort, and from the strangest sources. Kurtz, for instance, had grown rich out of coats and trousers. Bob halted, frowning, while Ying peered out from his hiding place at the passing throngs, exposing a tiny, limp, pink-ribboned tongue. If Kurtz, armed only with a pair of shears and a foolish tape, had won to affluence, why couldn't another? Stockbroking was no longer profitable. None of Bob's friends had earned their salt for months, and old Hannibal's opposition evidently forced a change of occupation. The prospect of such a change was annoying, but scarcely alarming to an ingrained optimist, and Bob took comfort in reflecting that the best-selling literature of the day was replete with instances of disinherited sons, impoverished society men, ruined bankers, or mere idlers who, by lightning strokes of genius, had mended their fortunes overnight. Some few, in the earlier days of frenzied fiction, had played the market, others the pony, still others had gone west and developed abandoned gold mines or obscure water powers. A number also had grown disgustingly rich from patenting rat traps or shoe buttons. One young man had discovered a way to keep worms out of railroad ties and had promptly bludgeoned the railroad companies out of fabulous royalties. Over the stock market idea, Bob could work up no enthusiasm. He knew too much about it, and inasmuch as horse racing was no longer fashionable, opportunities for a Pittsburgh Phil future seemed limited. Moreover, he had never saved a jockey's life, nor a jockey's mother from eviction, hence feed box tips were not likely, nor did he know a single soul in the business of inventing rat traps or shoe buttons. As for going west, he was clearly of the opinion that a search for abandoned gold mines or forgotten waterfalls wasn't his line, and the secret of creosoting railroad ties, now that he came to think of it, was still locked up in the breast of its affluent discoverer. Besides, as the whole episode had occurred in the second act of a play, the safety of building upon it was doubtful at best. No, evidently the well-recognized shortcuts to wealth had all been obliterated by many feet, and he must find another. But where? At length Bob's wrinkled brow smoothed itself, and he nodded. His path was plain. It led around the nearest corner to his tailor's door. Mr. Kurtz's greeting was warm as Bob strolled into the stately showroom with its high-backed Flemish oak chair, its great carved tables, its paneled walls with their antlered decorations. This, it may be said, was not a shop, not a store where clothes were sold, but a studio where men's distinctive garments were draped, and the difference was perfectly apparent on the first of each month. Bob gave Ying his freedom, to the great interest of the proprietor, who studied the dog's points with a practiced eye. "Kurtz," began Bob abruptly, "I just bet Dick Caddy $5,000 that I can make my own living for 6 months. This falsehood troubled him vaguely, until he remembered that high finance must be often conducted behind a veil. Mr. Kurtz, genial, shrewd, gray, raised admiring eyes from the capering puppy and said, "I'll take another 5,000. But Bob declined. "No, I'm going to work." This announcement interested the tailor deeply. "Who's going to hire you?" he asked. "You are." Kurtz blinked. "Maybe you'd like to bet on that, too," he ventured. "I'll give you odds. Work is one of the few things I haven't tried. You need a good salesman." "No, I don't. I have 7 already." "Say, wouldn't you like the trade of the whole younger set? I can bring you a lot of fresh customers, fellas like me." "Fresh customers is right," laughed Kurtz, then sobered quickly. "You're joking, of course." "I'm so serious I could cry. How much is it worth to you to make clothes for my crowd?" "Well," the tailor considered, "quite a bit. The boys like to see Dick trimmed. It's a matter of principle with them never to let him win a bet, and they'd do anything for me. You're the best tailor in the city, but too conservative. Now, I'm going to bring you 50 new accounts, everyone good for better than 2,000 a year. That's $100,000. How much am I offered? Going. Wait a minute. Would you stick to me for 6 months if I took you on?" "My dear Kurtz, I'll poultice myself upon you for life. I'll guarantee myself not to slide, slip, wrinkle, or skid. 30 years hence, when you come hobbling down to business, you'll find me here." Mr. Kurtz dealt in novelties, and the idea of a society salesman was sufficiently new to appeal to his commercial sense. "I'll pay you 20%, he offered, "for all the new names you put on my books. Make it 25 on first orders and 20 on repeaters. I'll bring my own luncheon and pay my car fare." "There wouldn't be any profit left." "Good, then it's a bargain. 25 and 20. Now watch me grab the adolescent offshoots of our famous 400. Bob chased Ying into a corner, captured him, then took a bus up the avenue to the college club for luncheon. At 3 o'clock he returned, accompanied by 4 flushed young men whose names gave Kurtz a thrill. In spite of their modish appearance, they declared themselves indecently shabby, and allowed Bob to order for them, a favor which he performed with the Rajah's lofty disregard of expense. He sat upon one of the carved tables, teasing Ying and selecting samples as if for a quartet of bridegrooms. Being bosom cronies of Mr. Cady, the four youths needed little urging. When they had gone in to be measured, Kurt said guardedly, "Wow! Why, that's more stuff than I've sold in 2 weeks." "A mere trifle," Bob grinned happily. "Say, Kurtz, this is the life. This is the job for me. Panhandling juvenile plutocrats. No office hours, no heavy lifting, and Thursdays off. I'm going to make you famous." "You'll break me with another run like this." "How much did they order?" The proprietor ran over his figures incredulously. 24 sack suits, 2 riding suits, 1 knicker, 4 evening suits, 4 dinner suits, 40 fancy waistcoats, 16 evening waistcoats, 4 pairs riding breeches, 4 motor coats, 3 vicuna overcoats, 2 ulsters. "You don't think they're bluffing?" "Why should they bluff? They'll never discover how many suits they have. Now figure it up and tell me the bad news." Mr. Kurtz did as directed, announcing, $5,505. "Pikers!" exclaimed the new salesman. Then he began laboriously to compute 25% out of the sum, using as a pad a bolt of expensive white silk vest material. $1,376.25 is my blackmail, Kurtz. That's what I call a safe and sane fourth. Not bad for dull times, and yet it might be better. Anyhow, it's the hardest $1,376 I ever earned." "Hard." The merchant's lips twitched, oscillating his cigar violently. "Hard. I'll bet those fellows even bought your lunch. I suppose you mean it's the first money you ever earned." He seemed to choke over the last word. "Well, it's worth something to get men like these on the books, but $1,376.25. Mr. Kurtz gulped. "In one day? Why, I could buy a farm for that." "How much will you have to earn to cover your living expenses for 6 months?" Ah, there we journey into the realm of purest speculation. Bob favored him with a sunny smile. "As well ask me how much of my living expenses must be in order to cover my earnings. Whatever one is, the other will be approximately ditto, or perhaps slightly in excess thereof. Anyhow, nothing but rigid economy, bane of my life, will make the one fit into the other. But I have a thought. Something tells me these boys need white flannels, so get out your stock, Kurtz. If they can't play tennis, they must learn, for my sake." Bob's remarkable stroke of fortune called for a celebration, and his 4 customers clamored that he squander his first profits forthwith. Ordinarily, such a course would have been just to his liking, but now he was dying to tell Lorelei of his triumph, and fearing to trust himself with even one drink, he escaped from his friends as soon as possible. Thus it chanced that he arrived home sober. It was a happy homecoming, for Ying was adorable and made his way instantly into Lorelei's heart, while Bob was in a state of exaltation. He had no desire to bind himself to Kurt's service for 6 months or for any other period, nor had he the least thought of living up to his agreement, until Lorelei began to treat the matter seriously. Then he objected blankly. "Why, it was all right as a joke, but I don't want to be a tailor. There's no romance in woolen goods." "How much do you owe?" she asked. "Really, I've no idea. It's something you don't have to remember. Somebody always reminds you in plenty of time, and then you borrow enough to pay up." "Let's forget the romance and pay up without borrowing. Remember, you have two families to support. Noting that the idea of permanent employment galled him, she added craftily, "Of course, you'll never sell another lot of clothes like this, but—" "Why not? It's like selling candy to a child." "You can't go with that crowd without drinking." "Is that so? Now, you sit tight and hold your hat on. I can make that business pay if I try, and still stay in the Rainmakers Union. There's big money in it, enough so that we can live the way we want to. I'm sick of this telephone booth, anyhow. We'll present it to some nice newsboy and rent an apartment with a closet. This one's so small I don't dare to let my trousers bag. Besides, we've been undercover long enough, and I want you to meet the people I know. We can afford the expense now that I'm making $1,376.25 a day." "I should like to know nice people," Lorelei confessed. "I'm sick of the kind I've met. The men are indecent and the women are vulgar. I've always wanted to know the other kind." Bob was delighted. His fancy took fire, and already he was far along toward prosperity. "You'll make a hit with the younger set. You'll be a perfect rave. Bert Heyman told me today that his married sister is entertaining a lot, and since the drama will be tottering on its way to destruction without you in a few days, I'll tell him to see that we're invited out to Long Island for a weekend." Join me next time for another romantic chapter of The Auction Block by Rex Beach, here on Love's Tender Flame. Until then, love deeply and live beautifully.